All right, so good evening. Most of you already know Matt Fritz, who's led Tuesday evenings here and has been a member of the Guiding Teachers Council, the board. In case I haven't met you, my name is Alana Harrison, and I'm a member of the Expanding Light Sangha, and for the past several years, and as of last year, am one of the co-chairs or co-leaders of that group, along with Tim Edmond, who many of you also know. You may also know that ELS, as we call ourselves, or the Expanding Light Sangha, was formerly the Young Adult Sangha. And that was a group that sprouted off of IMCC under the guidance of Liz Reynolds a while ago, with the purpose of creating a space for younger practitioners to share their common experiences as we walk the path. But last year, finding that many of us were now in our 40s and above, myself included, we broadened our membership. And now it is young adult and middle-aged practitioners. That being said, ELS is not a closed Sangha, and anyone is welcome to come and check it out. We meet once a month on the second Sunday here, usually in the parlor room, 6:30 to 8. But we function more like a Kalyanamita group, a KM group, or spiritual friends group. That's probably a more apt description of our group rather than a sub-Sangha. And again, just sharing our experiences as we walk the path, usually balancing it with full-time work and family rearing. But what makes ELS a bit different as well is that we are a peer-led group and are discussion-focused. So it's a little bit of a different approach. Each monthly meeting is facilitated by a different group member, not necessarily myself or Tim. Anyone can volunteer, literally anyone who wants to attend can volunteer to lead a session. And it's not necessarily a Dharma talk, although those do happen. More often, the facilitator, as we say, is prompting discussion in some way. So initiating some kind of group activity, which can be anything from kind of a shared movement experience to a shared creative art making experience. We've done that together. And then that usually prompts discussion around a theme. So we have quarterly themes. Our first theme of the year of 2025 was embodiment, and now we're moving into virtues. We keep it broad on purpose so that whoever would like to lead can fill in with whatever they find of interest. So while we do sit together, the focus is primarily on sharing, on speaking, and on communicating and being in community with each other, usually with one person speaking while others engage in active listening and giving everyone who wants to a chance to share what has come up for them around the prompt or the theme. And then sometimes, if it feels right and if it flows, actually getting into discussion and sharing ideas about what's been put out there. So that is some of the flavor that we're bringing tonight to give you an idea of how ELS meetings tend to run, to the extent that that's possible, because ELS meets in a group, in a circle, because that facilitates that sharing a little better. But we're going to try and make this work as well as possible in here with this setup, and for you all on Zoom as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's such a pleasure to be doing this with you this evening. And I've been so impressed with Elena from, I think, the first time I met her, as a co-facilitator of the group, and just organizationally spot on, a great practitioner. And it came so naturally when we met to figure out what we were going to talk about. And, I had some ideas, and then Elena did, and then it just kind of grew from there. And, I know a lot of people have expressed interest or curiosity in the Expanding Light Sangha. And some have said that they don't feel like it would be appropriate, due to age or whatever circumstances, to, participate in an ELS meeting. So we thought we would bring it to you. So delighted to have you all here. And if you are interested in joining the ELS, I'm sure Elena will provide details about that.
Yeah, and as we kind of go through the evening and give you an idea of the structure and the way that we tend to run our meetings, we just want you to keep in mind that what people tell me as a co-leader, and when we do surveys about our activities and our retreats, what comes back most often as the most meaningful part of the experience is sharing. It's not the meditation, it's not necessarily even the message, it's the communication that was generated from the experience and the creation of community in a container. That's what always comes up as number one, as what people found most impactful. So we're going to try and recreate that tonight. And if you like this format, it might be something for us to bring around again, or be a model for another CAM group or something else that might spring up. All right, so we are going to take a few minutes now just to sort of sit together and settle in, now that we've gotten some of the business out of the way. Okay. So I'd actually like us to begin by finding a comfortable position with eyes open and settling the gaze wherever it happens to fall. Because we're going to spend a few minutes sensing into our current experience. In the rush to arrive, there's a lot that has to come together. The logistics of whatever had to be done prior to arriving here, the ride over. There may be things running through our minds, replays of things that happened earlier today, conversations, events, news that we consumed. So in order to be present with each other, let's first be present here and just let the gaze fall on something and really attend to it. The contour of a piece of furniture, a beam of light, the movement of the fan. And now you may want to allow your eyes to close and allow your other senses to be amplified. Perhaps your sense of hearing. What different sounds are you noting? How many? Your sense of touch. The movement of air along your skin. The sense of your body settled into your seat or your feet on the floor. Just arriving in place. And if the mind has reattached itself to thought or memory, re-anchoring back into your physical presence here. All right, so I'm going to talk for a few minutes to set the stage for our topic for this evening and then hand it back over to Matt. So how about the news lately? We cannot escape it. Even if you are one who tries not to consume news and tries to abstain from doom scrolling, it's pretty hard probably to insulate oneself completely. A lot of strife, a lot of suffering of all kinds all over the world, man-made and natural disasters, overturning and ending people's lives. So as Matt and I sat down to ponder what we might cover tonight, the biggest news stories of those few days had to do with immigration and everything that was happening to ramp up the deportation process. Huge street protests had just taken place all over the country. And I was struck at that time by what felt to me like a real contrast, a real shift from between that degree of mobility and visibility following what to me had felt like months of despondency among large swaths of people. I was hearing other people talk about, and myself also felt a lot of hopeless inaction or even apathy. And it felt to me like all of a sudden something had stimulated people to get out of their seats and out of their homes and to get together to do something big again. And just felt like a big turnaround. But as we've seen and experienced even as recently as this last week, the tides can turn quickly in such a way that things can seem insurmountable once again from one day to the next. So the question that I found myself asking was, how can we, and perhaps myself, get engaged and stay invested without falling prey to those variable winds, without becoming either so strident that I risk burning out or risk feeling entirely defeated if my objective is not fully realized. So we talked and found ourselves discussing equanimity as an answer, along with a strong sense of belonging and community and connection. And then that was the idea of the ELS tie-in. So in 2023, I took a year-long course on the paramis with Leslie Booker. And during the month that we studied equanimity, she framed it as a moderator for the other paramis. So for example, equanimity keeps generosity from becoming overcommitment so that we don't try to pour from an empty cup. Equanimity keeps morality from becoming self-righteous judgment of others. Equanimity keeps compassion from turning into pity. And I was really attracted to the idea of that, of equanimity as a moderator. I'm sure that running in your mind through the other paramis, you can see how it may attenuate those as well. And Matt's going to go into some more detail about equanimity and some teachings there. And then with regard to belonging and connection, well, the nation just celebrated its 249th birthday, even as some of our leaders are attempting to define Americanness and otherness in ways that are more restrictive than they've been before and with more grave consequences. So as we approach the 250th and looking at the changes that we already know are coming and anticipating that there are some that we have not conceived of, how can we show up together in community and in action while preserving our well-being?
Yeah, such important and timely topics. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So one of the awesome things about IMCC is there are different teachers who kind of approach and present the Dharma in different ways. And last week and next week, Sharon Beckman-Brinley, who's a psychologist and one of the, she's probably not going to like me calling her a co-founder of IMCC, but she is giving basically a two-part talk. So you may have heard her last week either in person or on Zoom, or maybe watch the YouTube recording. So the theme last week was working with the mind and the thoughts and the tendency for our attention to go down these rabbit holes of mental chatter, or a colleague tells me the indwelling Twitter feed. I certainly have that one. And yeah, so Sharon shared with us about, how the natural tendency of mind is to get habitually drawn into these endless cycles that self-perpetuate. We got the stories, the worries, the planning, the self-analysis, the Monday morning quarterbacking. And that can all feel like falling down a rabbit hole. So, Sharon did present some really great, pragmatic techniques. She had some strategies on noticing the chatter, just, non-judgmental awareness, noticing when the attention has drifted. She talked about anchoring in the present moment, which can be helped by focusing on, the body or the breath or sensations. And then she had this theme or strategy of allowing, not pushing. So having a self-compassionate approach so that we're not, pushing thoughts away, but rather acknowledging them with curiosity, with an attitude of self-kindness. And of course, she talked about the role of consistent practice. And she's going to have part 2 of this theme next week. And I think it actually fits in well with some of the things that I wanted to mention to you. And I'm not going to say that much because really I don't know that much more than, or actually any more than you do. And so I like to ground, what I say in the teachings of great masters like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And so you may know that last Sunday, His Holiness turned 90. And so there was like this birthday celebration in Dharamsala where the Dalai Lama lives, and Richard Gere was there. And it was all sorts of just celebrations that lasted, I think, a week. And you can catch them on YouTube if you want to see part. There's like a condensed 12-minute version, or you can get like the full 3 hours, or you see like every step His Holiness takes. But anyway, so the Dalai Lama is my root teacher, so I have, I'm biased. I have a strong affinity towards his teachings and his style. And so I wanted to focus in on a commentary that His Holiness gave on one particular verse of a cycle of teachings called the Lojong. And here's where the tie-in to Sharon's talk comes. So Lojong is a Tibetan word that means something like mind training, but I think heart-mind training might actually be a more accurate translation of that term. So back in 1998, His Holiness gave a series of talks in Washington, D.C., up Route 29, on verse 2 of actually the first 3 verses. And I'm going to focus in on verse 2 of this Lojong text. And and the reason I selected his commentary on verse 2 is because he talks about equanimity a lot, and that's our theme for this evening. So after I share some insights from His Holiness, I also want to share some insights from Western psychology, because the Dalai Lama, as you may know, through his involvement in co-founding the Mind and Life Institute, which is headquartered here in Charlottesville, the Dalai Lama, since a very young age, has been very interested in science, and particularly the intersection of traditional Buddhist teachings with modern science. And he's famously said that if modern science were to disprove something about the Buddhist canon, then we should listen to science and adapt, the Buddhist canon appropriately. But more about that in a minute. Let me just focus in a little bit more on his commentary, His Holiness's commentary on verse 2 of the Lojong. And in that commentary, he says that genuine compassion and loving kindness arise from a clear, vivid understanding that all sentient beings, human and non-human, just like us, wish to be happy and free from suffering. So that's like, if you could distill down the whole Buddha Dharma, that would pretty much be it. Be happy, try to be free from suffering as much as you can. So then we can recognize that every being, yes, including the ones that we dislike and who really irk us, that even those people too have the innate right to pursue this fundamental set of aspirations on being happy and free from suffering. That can, when we really start to internalize that, that is what gives rise to what's called Maha Karuna. So Maha means great, Karuna means compassion. So this is a great compassion and transcends these sort of labels of friend or foe, or close or far, or good or bad. And then that when we can embody in our heart mind this Maha Karuna, it can help us free ourselves from bias or partiality or judgment. So as long as a being is capable, His Holiness said, of experiencing joy and suffering, our compassion should extend to them without exception. So without exception, compassion to all sentient beings equally. So it's really an all-embracing quality that is the hallmark of authentic compassion. So the essence of inclusivity and partiality. So here's where the teachings on that His Holiness I just summarized on Mahakaruna, or great compassion, intersect with equanimity. So sometimes this term upekkha, or equanimity, has kind of not such an accurate perception. So it's not like detachment, like I'm going to go off and hide in a cave. But as His Holiness often explains, the real sense of detachment is not about withdrawing from the world, or putting our head in the sand, or shutting down. Instead, it's about freeing the mind from biased attachment and aversion, using some of those strategies that Sharon shared with us last week. And it's excellent to favor those people who are close to us and our immediate family, and then being neutral or rejecting those people who are halfway across the planet who are doing things that we don't like. But I'll quote His Holiness here: compassion is not religious business, it is human business. It is essential for human survival. And he goes on to say that in order for compassion to be truly universal, it has to have the foundation of even-minded clarity and equanimity. So we could say that equanimity is the requisite foundation for developing universal compassion. And so, if we can remove this kind of emotional partiality that inhibits our ability to care for others, then we're well on our way. So in a way, you could talk about detachment in the sense of cultivating equanimity as a skillful means. So, the Buddha taught 84,000 plus teachings for 84,000 plus types of people. And so this concept of skillful means is kind of like selecting the right teaching for the right time, for the right, matching it up with the person's needs. And so when we practice equanimity in this way, far from being disengaged, we can become more present and more available to others' suffering, and more capable of expressing compassion without boundaries. And in short, as His Holiness reminds us, the Buddha's teaching on detachment is not about indifference. It is about creating the inner conditions necessary for boundless, unbiased love and compassion to flourish. Sounds good to me. So those are some of the things that His Holiness has said about equanimity, and he said much more, but that's just a brief sampling. So now I wanted to turn just briefly to some insights from Western psychology, particularly those that make the link between neuroscience and equanimity. So this is from an article called "The Four Attitudes of Calm" by Dr. Everly. psychologist, and it was published 2023 in Psychology Today, which is fact-checked, unlike a lot of things these days. And so when we have a lot of stress, we're in like fight or flight, and we get back into our lizard brain, our amygdala. And there is research showing that we can kind of actually be in the driver's seat, even if our amygdala and our primal motives are being activated, and that by adopting these 4 attitudes of equanimity, we can actually reduce stress and change our lives for the better. So just trying to summarize here so we can get to a short practice. Yeah, so by shifting our mindset, either by practicing some of the Lojong teachings or some of Sharon's strategies, we can soothe our nervous system and reduce stress and promote balance. So these 4 attitudes are gratitude, which can counteract envy and resentment by focusing on what we appreciate. Number 2, forgiveness, which can diffuse anger and the impulse for revenge. 3 is acceptance, which can ease worry and inner resistance by acknowledging reality. And 4th, my favorite, hope, which can transcend current distress by fostering positive expectation. So those are the 4 attitudes, at least according to Western psychology: gratitude, forgiveness, acceptance, and hope. So let's take just about 2 to 3 minutes to do a short practice before we set the stage for what's going to happen after cookies. And so I invite you to sit comfortably, either with eyes gently closed or a little open. Let's just take a deep breath in and releasing it slowly. And firstly, see if you can bring to mind something, whether it's small or large, that you feel grateful for. Whether it's a person, a place, a moment today, or even your breath. Let that sense of appreciation fill your body. Maybe even saying to ourselves, in this moment, I am grateful. And just taking a few gentle breaths. And then moving to forgiveness, the second attitude. See if you can recall to mind a moment where there was some tension, either within yourself or with someone else. And I invite you to say silently, may I release the weight of resentment. May I open to peace. For a few moments, let's breathe in forgiveness and breathe out tension. Moving on to the third attitude of acceptance. So perhaps reflecting on something you're struggling with, whether it's big or small. And rather than fighting it, just name it. maybe saying to ourselves, this is what's here. And for now, I accept it. And as we breathe gently and steadily, we might feel the relief that comes with surrendering resistance. And finally, let's turn to the fourth attitude of equanimity, which is hope. So perhaps imagining something really good unfolding. Maybe it's healing or clarity or joy. And let this image, if you will, rise gently in your heart. Feeling a sense of calm confidence grow within you. Breathing in the possibility of good things coming to us. And breathing out ease. And as you feel ready, wiggling fingers and toes and coming back to our precious Sangha gathered here tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Elena for a preview of the second half.
Yeah, so we're going to break for cookies here, but I just want to give you an idea of what's going to happen after that so that we're prepared to roll right into things when we get back. Again, speaking with each other is often cited as the most valuable part of an ELS meeting. So we'd love for you to give it a try, but if it's really not for you, no one's going to force you to participate. You can certainly think about the prompts that we're going to put up on the screen on your own. You may meditate on your own in any position you'd like. You may journal, whatever you'd like to do, and your group mates will engage in speaking and active listening. these discussion prompts, these questions. There are 4 of them. You don't necessarily have to each tackle each one. You can pick what's of interest to you, but we're really interested most in hearing what you might have to say for yourself about number 4. So first, reflecting on how the events of the last few weeks have affected you emotionally and energetically, and have they changed the way that you are showing up? Have they changed the way that you're feeling or the way that you're choosing to behave or act? That's number 2. And then what forms of change and action and activism do you engage in or see others engaging in, big and small, just tossing out ideas, everything from letter writing, retail boycotts, what have you. And then 4th, do you see any fault lines in your approach that could use a touch of equanimity? And maybe referring back to some of the points that Matt talked about for those strategies about achieving equanimity.
So just to kind of close the loop on some of our thoughts that we shared earlier, I wanted to do a closing group aspiration focused on the topic of equanimity, and then we'll have a dedication of merit following that. So I invite you to, just check back in with the body to find that comfortable, upright, but relaxed position, maybe with hands resting gently in the lap. So in honor of His Holiness's 90th birthday, let's cultivate a group aspiration related to the topics of equanimity, community, and interdependence. This is called Opening the Heart to Compassion. I invite you to reflect on the following. All beings, friend, enemy, and stranger, wish to be happy. All seek to be free from suffering. Just like me, they long to feel safe and understood. May I regard all beings with a mind of balance, free from bias. And may I cultivate compassion equally, without attachment or aversion. So just taking a few moments to sit with this aspiration in silence. So coming back into the body and the room. So we'll close with part of a prayer that the Dalai Lama recites every morning. And this is from Shantideva's A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And this is not the entire prayer, but rather the first 2 stanzas and the last 2 stanzas. And we do have the words up on screen, and if you're able to see them, I would love it if we could recite these 4 verses together. May all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Thank you, dear Sangha. And have a wonderful rest of the evening and week ahead. Try to stay cool. And
maybe we'll see some of you at ELS.
yes, indeed.